Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ksenia and I make videos for people who, like myself, are going through the family-based immigration process. I'm not an immigration attorney. My videos are based on publicly available information, my own experience, and the experience of my subscribers. And the purpose of my channel is to give you guys the confidence to go through this process completely on your own. Today's video is a long-awaited one, and this is a step-by-step guide on how to complete the DS-260. Luckily, I'm very thankful for those of you who have shared your own DS-260 applications with me for the purposes of me creating this comprehensive guide. So thank you very much to those of you who have helped. So I will be showing you a completed DS-260 application, but we will go over each question step by step, and I will also address some of the most frequently asked questions in regards to this form. First and foremost, you have to pay the fees for all the applications that you need to complete, specifically the affidavit of support fee and the immigrant visa application fee. So towards the bottom of the page, this will be the summary of your case, and only after your fees are submitted and processed, you will see an option to begin completing the form and uploading necessary evidence. So when you first start the application, you will be taken to this page which describes some of the things that you will need to consider before you complete this application. So please read the disclaimer carefully. Once you read everything, click this button here to certify that you agree and understand with everything that is written above, and we can get started with our application. So click continue. So the first part of the application asks about the personal information of the person who is applying for the green card. If you are, for example, helping somebody else with completing these forms, please make sure that you're typing in their personal information. The information on these pages must match the passport information of the person applying for the green card. If they don't yet have a passport, they definitely need one because they will need it in order to be able to complete these sections. So if you have not yet obtained a passport, you need to do that first before you proceed, because you want to make sure that when you are submitting all the necessary documents and evidence and everything, and that the name and the date of birth and everything in the passport matches exactly with your visa application. So first, you will need to provide the surname, which is the last name of the person applying. Next, you will need to provide their first name, also known as the given name. Next, you will need to provide the name of this person in their native alphabet. This will only apply to you if, for example, you're applying for a person from a country where they don't use English letters to communicate or write. Here is where you will write what their name looks like exactly in their native written alphabet. Maybe they're using Sanskrit, whatever it is, Chinese characters, Japanese, Arabic, whatever it might be, you will type their name in here. And if you are not able to do that, then you will simply have to click this button here. Next, it will ask you to provide if you have ever used any other names since birth. If you click yes, you will be asked to provide those names. Here, there's also a helpful tip on that on the side as well. If you have any additional names that you have used, you can always add another by clicking this button right here. Next, you will need to indicate your sex and your current marital status and the date and the place of your birth. Once we complete this first part of the application, click Save. So next, you will be asked to provide information about all of your nationalities and citizenships. So first, you will need to select the country of your origin, so your nationality. Next, you will need to provide the information from your passport or any other travel document, but chances are, if you are applying for a green card, you will be using your passport. There really isn't any way around it. Next, you will be asked a question if you do hold any other nationality other than the one you indicated above, and if you answer yes, you will be asked to provide and list all nationalities that you currently hold or you have ever held. It will ask you to provide the country and obviously if you currently hold that nationality or not. The next part of the application asks you to provide information about your present and previous address information. So first of all, The present address information is the physical address where you're currently residing. If there are parts of the address that don't apply in your case, you simply can click does not apply. If, for example, you are someone who lives in like a village or something that doesn't necessarily have a postal code number or anything like that, you can say does not apply. And then you will need to provide the month and the year when you started residing here. Moving on, you will need to provide information of all the previous addresses where you have ever resided since the age of 16. And luckily, this application helps you calculate when exactly you turned 16. It will ask you if you have ever lived anywhere else. Chances are you probably have. So you will answer yes and provide the address history. The address history that you will be filling out will have to be retroactive from the address most recent before your current address, and you will be moving backwards in time. Please make sure that there's no gaps in your addresses larger than 1 month. If there are, then it will give you an error and it will not let you proceed with the application or submit it. You only need to mention addresses where you have actually resided and not the addresses where you have visited, like a hotel, for example, for a vacation. But you will need to list addresses, for instance, if you have lived anywhere else or if you have studied in another country and you have been actually present there and resided there, then you will need to provide those addresses as well. Next, you will be asked to provide your contact information. So obviously provide your phone number, and this needs to be a phone number which is easily accessible to you because there are circumstances when they will need to call you. So make sure that the phone number you are providing is included with the designated area code as well. If you have used any other phone numbers in the past 5 years, you will have to answer yes and provide that phone number as well. List out your email and any other emails that you have used. So list your primary email that will be used to communicate with you here. And if you have used any other emails, then you will have to answer yes and input those emails here as well. And the final part of this page asks you to provide the information on your social media. And this is where you will have to list out all different types of social medias that you hold. One would only assume that the purpose of providing this kind of information is to make sure that you haven't been affiliated or posted anything online that could be considered a threat to US security. Next, you will need to provide information on your mailing and your permanent address. So the mailing address is the address where you are able to receive your mail. If your mailing address is the same as your physical address where you currently live, then you will simply answer yes. If it is different and you answer no, then you will be asked to provide the actual mailing address. The next question asks you to provide the permanent address where you intend to live once you arrive in the United States. So there is some confusion when it comes to providing this particular address. So in a lot of circumstances, this will probably be an address of the person who petitioned you. But there are obviously cases where the petitioner, for example, is not actually living in the United States and will only move to the US after your green card application is processed. Alternatively, if you are a diversity visa applicant and you're trying to figure out what your permanent address should be once you move to the United States. So in this particular case, you will need to provide the best address that you possibly could find. So if, for example, in your situation, your petitioner is not currently residing in the United States, chances are they will also need to obtain a co-sponsor to help them sponsor you for the purposes of the affidavit of support. So in this particular case, if you're not yet sure where you and the petitioner will be residing, there also is a possibility that you provide the address of the person who signed to be your co-sponsor, because a co-sponsor must reside in the United States. If you have a friend or an acquaintance in the United States, then you can also ask them to be able to use this address. The reason why this information is important is it also determines where your green card will actually be mailed. If you answer yes to this question, then this is where they will most likely mail your green card. But even if you are unsure and you answer no, you will still be asked to provide an alternative address where you want your green card to be mailed. One thing I would say is that you can try to provide whatever address you feel like is best for you at the moment. And once your immigrant visa is approved, you will be asked to pay something known as an immigrant fee. And this is the green card processing fee to issue you an actual physical green card. Now, the good news is that you actually don't have to pay the immigrant fee before you leave your home country for the United States. You actually can pay the immigrant fee upon your arrival in the United States. In that case, obviously, there may be a little bit of a longer wait for you to receive your green card, but if you are more comfortable doing that, then by all means, you can do that. So this part of the application asks you to provide information about your parents. Again, this is asking about the parents of the person applying for a green card. So you will need to provide first the father's information, again, surname, given name, date of birth, place of birth. You will also be asked a question if your father is still living. If you answer yes, then they will ask to provide your father's actual address where they currently are. If you answer no to this question, then you will be asked to provide the year of death of your parent. Same applies to the mother's information. Again, you will have to provide the information of the mother. Please pay attention because in this particular part, they're asking for your mother's maiden name or the name at birth. So in this part of the application, you will be asked information about your current spouse. Again, in the beginning of the application where it asks for your marital status, if you selected single, for example, or anything other than married, then this part of the application may not be visible to you. However, if you answered that you are currently married, then you will have this additional page to complete about your current spouse. So obviously provide the actual legal name of your current spouse, their date of birth, place of birth. Next, it will ask you to provide the spouse's address. So here you will be given an option to select whether the spouse is living in the same address where you intend to live in the United States. If you say other or something else, then you will have to provide that address where exactly your spouse is living, and then you will provide your spouse's current occupation. If you can't find an occupation that matches in the list, then you will have to select other and indicate where exactly your spouse works. And then you will need to provide the date of marriage and the place of marriage. And the date and the place of marriage should be whatever is listed on your marriage certificate, not where you held the ceremony. And the next question asks if this spouse is immigrating to the US with you. Now, this question can be quite tricky, and this is where you need to pay attention. This is asking whether or not your spouse is immigrating with you, not physically traveling with you. So if your spouse is also your petitioner, say they're living overseas with you, but they're planning to move back to the United States with you once you receive your green card, you don't answer yes to this question because your spouse is not going to be immigrating to the US. They are already a citizen or a permanent resident, so you will answer no to this question. The only time you will ever answer yes to this question is only if your spouse is included on the same green card case as yours. So if your spouse was your derivative on your case, then you would answer yes. If, for example, you have petitioned your mom and your dad and they have separate green card cases, they will consequently have completely separate DS-260 applications. They will have entirely different even login credentials for the NVC portal. So in this particular case, you will also say no because this question is asking whether or not your spouse is a derivative on the same type of case, on the same type of petition. So anytime you have a spouse who also has a separate I-130 petition, you will also answer no to this question. If you answer no to this question, there will be an additional question asked of you, and that is your spouse immigrating at a later time after you? Again, you will answer no if your spouse is a US citizen, a permanent resident, or if your US spouse also had a separate I-130 petition. If your spouse is truly a derivative and if they're truly eligible to be your derivative, when you go to the homepage of your NVC portal, you will be able to see their name under your name as a derivative. But if they do not appear there, that means that they're not eligible to immigrate to the US with you. So you will answer no to this question. Next, you will be asked to provide information about your previous spouses. This is pretty self-explanatory. You will need to say if you have ever had any previous spouses before the current spouse, how many previous spouses you have. You will need to include previous spouses, even those who are deceased. And even if you were married to the same person twice in the past, you will need to add them again as another case, indicate their name, when they were born, when you got married to them again, and when you got divorced from them again. Even if you are petitioning for the spouse that you have been married to and divorced in the past, you will have to mention them here. This part of the form asks you about children. You will need to provide information on all children, all living children that you have. So if you have any children, you will need to indicate the number of those children. You will include all natural children, adopted children, and stepchildren. If you are aware that you have a child, even if you're not in contact with that child, you will need to list them either way. You will need to make your best efforts in obtaining all the information that you possibly can as part of this application. This is a very serious application, and not just about the children, but in general. For this type of application, you need to be completely honest. You can't be lazy and just say, I don't know, or not list anybody who you think doesn't belong, because this can cause you a lot of trouble down the line. So for instance, if you don't list a child on this application, however, down the line, you receive your green card and you actually decide to petition that child or your son or your daughter, even if they are over the age of 21, but they have never been listed on this application in the past, they will have a lot of questions and they may automatically deny that kind of case or that kind of petition because you lied to immigration. So be very diligent in including all the information that you possibly can in these applications, because it is very important that Department of State doesn't catch you on a lie in the future applications. Now next, you will be asked very similar questions that you were asked when you were filling out the information about your spouse. So first, you will need to answer if this child currently lives with you, yes or no. And then you will be asked if this child will be immigrating to the US with you. If this child is already a US citizen, then you will obviously answer no to this question. Again, this is not referring to whether your child is traveling to the United States with you. This is asking whether your child is actually immigrating to the US with you. Next, if your child also had a separate I-130 petition filled out on their behalf, you will also answer no to this question, because this child is not included as a derivative on your green card case. You would actually answer yes to this question is, for instance, if your petitioner was a permanent resident. And as you know, permanent residents only need to fill out one I-130 petition for both their spouse and any children that they would like to immigrate. So in that case, you would answer yes, because this child is a derivative on the parents' green card case. If you answer no to this question, you will be asked an additional question whether or not this child will be immigrating to the US at a later date to join you. Again, this is very similar if they have a separate green card case, or if this child is already a citizen, you answer no. So on the side of this application, they also give you a note about what kind of visa classifications do not allow derivatives, and they are all about immediate relatives. So immediate relatives of US citizens don't have derivatives. On this part of the application, you will be asked questions about previous US travel information. So if you have never been to the United States, you simply answer no. If you've never been issued a visa, you will simply answer no. And if you've never been refused a visa, you simply answer no. If you have ever been to the US, you will answer yes to this question and provide when you went there and how long you stayed. And if you have been to the US multiple times in the past, you will need to add an additional entry for every time that you have spent in the United States. If you have ever been issued a visa to the United States, you will be asked to provide the information about that visa, such as what kind of visa it was and what was the outcome of the visa and when you applied for it. And the final question, if you have ever been refused or denied a visa to the United States or have been refused admission to the US, if you answer yes, you will also need to provide additional details. Next, you will need to provide information about your work and education. So you will need to provide your primary occupation, where you work right now, and the address where you work. If you have any other occupations, then you may choose to also add that information. And then this question asks where you intend to work in the United States. So for family-based applicants, this question doesn't really mean anything. So just answer it to your best ability. Next, you will be asked to provide any additional information about your education and training, and if you have ever served in the military or traveled to any other countries in the past 5 years. Next, you will need to provide the petitioner's information. So first, you will need to select who this petitioner is to you, what their relationship is, and then you will need to provide their address and contact information. This is pretty self-explanatory. The final couple of parts of this form all have to do with security and background information. So I will not go over every single question, but I will talk about certain questions that a lot of people seem to have confusion about. So the first part asks you about your medical and health information. Next question asks if you have documentation to establish that you receive all vaccinations. So this particular question does cause a lot of confusion. A lot of people that I see help others complete these immigrant applications will simply say yes and say, well, when you go to the panel physician who will complete your medical exam, if you're missing any vaccines, they'll simply administer them to you. So say yes to this question. Now, my personal opinion is that you should never lie on these kinds of applications. So firstly, I recommend that you go to the Department of State site and you look up the list of required vaccinations. I believe it's on the Department of State or the USCIS site. You can find the list of required vaccinations. Then you need to figure out if you have all of these vaccinations. If you are missing some, you can do one of two things. You can either save this application and come back to it later after you obtain all the necessary vaccinations, or you can simply answer no to this question and in the explanation box indicate that you are currently in the process of collecting all the necessary vaccinations. So that is my personal opinion. Some people choose to say yes to all of these questions. The other two questions ask if you have any mental or physical disorders that may be a threat to safety, or if you have any drug-related difficulties. So next, parts of this form will ask you a bunch of criminal and security information. So hopefully the answer to all of these is no for you. Now, this is another question that I would like you to pay attention to, and that is, are you a member of the Communist or Totalitarian Party? Now, this could be a difficulty for those of you who come from countries who are currently communist countries. It is very likely that if you answer yes to this question, that your application will be denied. If you are coming from a country like China, for example, that is a communist country, you will have to say yes to this question because by proxy, being born in China and living in China, you are part of the communist regime. However, if you do have to answer yes to this question, I definitely don't suggest that you do this application on your own. I highly recommend that you obtain an attorney, especially an attorney who is experienced in this situation, who can help you find a way around this hurdle, because there are ways to obtain certain waivers, but you shouldn't be doing this on your own. It is very similar to any other questions on the security list. If you have ever been convicted of a crime or something has ever occurred in the past, you definitely shouldn't be doing this application on your own, and you need to first consult with an immigration attorney who can help you guide through the situation. Again, moving on, there's additional questions that have to do if you have ever violated immigration laws, and miscellaneous additional questions that you will need to answer. Again, read through every single question carefully. And the final part of this application asks about the social security number. If you are someone who has never been in the United States, then you don't have a social security number and you will simply answer no to this question. If, however, you have been to the US before and you have actually applied for a social security number, you can indicate it here. So if you answer yes, you will be asked to provide what the SSN is. If you answer yes, that you have received a social security number, you will be asked a couple of additional questions, such as, would you like to receive a new social security card? And if you answer yes, then you will give consent to the Department of State to communicate with the Social Security Administration to issue you a new card. Now, if you have ever gotten a social security number, it will never change. So your number will always stay the same, because an SSN is a crucial part of everyone's identity in the United States. So everyone has only one social security number. If you would like a new actual physical card, you can select yes, or you can select no if you still have your card and you don't need a new one. If, however, you would like to apply for a social security number, you can click yes to the next question over here, and that way you will be able to apply for a social security number directly by submitting this green card application. You will need to have a social security number in order to be able to work in the United States and pay taxes. So eventually you're going to have to apply for it anyway. And finally, after you fill out all the necessary information, you will be taken to the review page, which you can review page by page every single part of your application. Once you complete the review of your application, you will be taken to a page where you will be asked to actually electronically sign and submit this application. Once you submit this application, you will be taken to a page that looks like this, where you can print your confirmation, where you can print a copy of your DS-260 form. Don't forget to print the confirmation and save it. Also, don't forget to print a copy of this form for your own records and bring them to the interview when it's time for you to go. In addition, one thing that you need to know is that once you submit the DS-260 form, there is no way for you to edit it and change anything in the form. So this is why it's very important that you take your time and you complete the form correctly to your best ability. The only time you will be able to change anything in the form is when you go to your actual consular interview. I hope that you found this video useful. I hope that I answered a lot of your questions. I wish you all the best of luck in this application process. Let me know if you have any additional questions. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and I hope to see you guys in my next videos. Bye!